Hello and welcome to this Institute for Strategic Leadership Business Forum. I'm Andrew Patterson. To support leaders as we navigate these unprecedented times, ISL has created this weekly Leader Forum. We want to provide a learning community where panelists share their experiences and insights as we switch from business as usual to leadership in crisis. As we move from level 4 to level 3 lockdown this week, we're contrasting the views of two business leaders, one running a successful SME business and the other heading a large corporate, to see what the implications are for their respective businesses. We'll explore how they're navigating both the challenges of this new operating environment as well as the opportunities that they're seeing, discuss some of the key trends for leader engagement and mojo, and importantly, will level 3 finally liberate their businesses and or sectors, or is it a double-edged sword? And as always, we'll be taking your questions from our online audience. I'll tell you a little bit more about how to do that shortly. First, let me introduce our three panelists joining us today. Firstly, from Queenstown, Fleur Caulton is an accomplished and successful restaurateur with over 25 years' experience in the hospitality industry. Fleur opened her first restaurant, Vino, at the age of 21 in Queenstown, knowing nothing, she confesses in hindsight. Fleur is the CEO and founder of Go-To Collection, operating Rata in Queenstown, and Madam Wu restaurants across New Zealand, and more recently, the Hawker and Roll spin-off. Welcome to you, Fleur. Rick Hurd is the CEO of commercial construction company Naylor Love. About 5 years ago, Rick started a forum called the Vertical Construction Leaders Group that now has about 100 signatories who are all CEOs or GMs of leading vertical commercial construction companies. As it turned out, it was a timely decision in the wake of the current COVID crisis, as it allows for integrated and timely responses to construction-related issues, as well as being a cohesive line of communication for government into the construction industry. Rick, welcome to you. And also joining us from ISL, Gareth Lorigan, where he is Programs Director at ISL, involved in the Institute's Strategic Leadership Program and Step Up Leadership Program. With involvement in over 40 programs, he's seen hundreds of individual leadership journeys emerge, as well as the development of many successful teams through ISL's post-program workshop offerings. Welcome to you all. Just before we begin, a quick message for our online audience. We do welcome and encourage your questions, which we'll take at the end of this forum. If you'd like to ask a question, our panel, here's how you go about doing that. You can either post your questions straight into the YouTube chat, or alternatively, head to Slido, that's www.sli.do, and type in the event pin 16695. At 16695, and then questions that you ask will be passed on to the panel at the end. And we certainly look forward to your questions, and don't be shy about asking them. All right, let's get underway. Obviously, we're currently living through unprecedented times right now, and yet, like all such shocks, of course, it's causing us to work and engage differently. Let's start off by looking at the weekly ISL Leader Pulse, and some of the key trends we're seeing for leader engagement and mojo, and whether our panelists are seeing similar trends in their respective businesses. Gareth, do you want to take us through some of the trends that ISL are observing in your weekly mojo control?
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. The Leader Pulse has been running for around 5 weeks, and what we're starting to see now is the development or emergence of a couple of different stories or narratives, if you like, for the essential and non-essential participants of that survey. In the essential services, what we saw initially was, some job security, job reliability. They were very purposeful. There was a lot of adrenaline pumping, quick decisions. Possibly a lower level of bureaucracy, so quick decision-making really got that heart pumping. What we do know is that, this is a bit of a marathon, not a sprint, so it's hard to sustain that. And the question that everyone's asking is, how long is this all going to last? What we're starting to see now is in the essential services, a lower mojo and a lower level of engagement. So there's some real questions that we need to start probing around that. In the non-essential, initially it was around, will I survive? How long is this going to last? And recently, with the change to level 3 in New Zealand and some easing of restrictions in Australia, you know, there's almost a light at the end of the tunnel, so possibly sparking a bit more of an upbeat outlook. However, what we do know is that there's different types of impacts, and we'll probably hear a little bit more about this today. You know, the small to medium enterprises, and especially on a tourism-facing front, like for Fleur, for example, and other organisations in that industry, they're letting people go. So this is a tough time. They're weighing up whether this is a good time to go back into the market and use some cash to pump up their organisations again. But possibly, you know, in other industries, construction and so on, even though things are not quite clear yet, but you know, we're really keen to hear if there's a bit more optimism at the light at the end of the tunnel. I can see online there's already some skeleton crews already working on roads and things in New Zealand, so it's looking a little bit more optimistic.
Right, let's get our panelists' views as to whether or not that squares with their own experience. Fleur, you're based in Queenstown, which really is, I guess, become the epicenter of this crisis from a business perspective, unfortunately for all the wrong reasons. Give us some sense about the way you're having to adapt your leadership style to deal with this new circumstance.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, look, we really feel that we're sort of in the eye of the storm here. Not only are we in hospo, but you know, in the epicenter of tourism, which seems to, I think, you know, we got front faced with it probably before everybody else. You know, the difficult part that I've had is my crystal ball hasn't been working, and as an entrepreneur, I really rely on that crystal ball to be something that gets me through the next 6 months, 5 years, whatever it is, and it sort of just stops spinning. So I think, you know, 40 years in hospo and running small businesses prepares you a little bit for crisis. But for me, it was really about, I had to learn to change the way that I communicated. I had to have more communication with my staff that wasn't, you know, front facing. And, you know, like all of us, we're using Zoom and all of these things. But I think we really stepped up the communication, and we needed it to be, well, I really needed it to be genuine. One of our key pillars is genuine, generous, genuine, adventurous and skillful. So we really wanted things to be honest and upfront. And we've really tried to be very open with all the staff because we are in a serious crisis. And, you know, today we're letting go probably 70% of our workforce, which is, you know, hugely impacting me personally. But look, we then, you know, I then moved towards that adventurous piece for us. And we have to be really adventurous in our thinking about how we can reimagine what we're doing. And what is that future going to look like? We talked a little bit prior to, you know, this about how tourism has such a great opportunity, and New Zealand as a whole, with tourism being a big part of our GDP, to really reimagine what it looks like. And I'm very excited to be a part of that. And I know a lot of the people that work with me are very excited to be able to participate in that as well and see what change that we can bring about. You know, one of the other key things was really about keeping yourself well and balanced, and trying not to be too emotional. And you know, because when a crisis happens, it can hit you from all different angles. I think a little bit of gin works quite well, as does the you know, lots of exercise. Feel privileged to be here where we can get out any time of the day. Bike, walk, run, whatever we want to do, it's here and available. But I think that's really key. The other things are just really about, we see it in 3 parts. We've just got to survive. And that survival mode is using skills, you know, negotiations. We're negotiating with landlords. You know, what is the outcome that you want? And we're sort of bumbling along in that respect, because we don't really have a clear path yet.
Just give a little insight perhaps around your mindset at the moment. You mentioned before about how this had sort of thrown you off balance, obviously, because you rely on that, you know, instinctive nature as an entrepreneur. And I think of all the sectors in business, you know, the toughest at the moment obviously is SME, because, you know, you don't have those, you know, major credit lines and everything else that bigger companies can rely on at this time. Just give us a sense of where your mindset is at the moment.
Yeah, so, again, it just reverts back to we're really in that survival mode. How can we survive? How can we pay our creditors? How can we pay our staff and our landlords? And when are we going to open? And what does it look like when we do open? And I think that is the toughest question for small businesses, whether it's retail, hospitality, various other industries, is when we reopen, what does it look like? Who's coming to us? How are we going to, in level 2, are we having to wear masks and the staff social distance from the customer? Well, it's not hospitality, is it? And it's certainly not generous. And those sorts of things are really, throwing roadblocks in front of us. I think, the easier picture is to look 12 months ahead and what that looks like further into the future. And that looks very optimistic and very positive. But this next 6 months, 8 months is a very tricky
real
place
challenge.
to be in. Yeah, huge challenge.
Rick, give us your perspective, because obviously you're a larger business, but you've moved into more sector leadership in your current role as well too. Tell us about some of the various aspects of your leadership perspective that you're having to deal with at the moment.
Well, Naylor Love's possibly a little different. We're a large company with small company values. I'm a CEO essentially without a desk. My home's in Nelson. I do have a desk in Christchurch, but we have operations in 8 countries, 8 regions around the country. And one of the things I do as a leader is I get out there and I get on the jobs and go around our offices on a regular basis. And I'm trying to get to each region at least once a month, talk to staff, talk to the people on the site. And of our 750 odd people, I would know 400 to 500 of them by name. And the ones that I don't know by name are ones that are relatively new to the company I haven't had a chance to meet yet. So that's a very important part of Naylor Love, is those family values and the connection relationship with our people and our teams. So the biggest difficulty for me has been maintaining that communication, that personal level of empathy with our people through the crisis, particularly being locked up at home. So I've had to change my communication from verbal and being in front of people to written communication with emails. And we run at least 2 newsletters, just single page A4 newsletters a week, 2 of each week, telling people what's going on, because they're worried about their jobs, they're worried about the future, they're worried about the COVID, and we are trying to keep them up to speed, keep them as much news on where the company's at, what we're doing about supporting them as far as their wage packet, etc. goes. And the good thing is about that, and if you talk about Mojo, is that we've had very positive feedback because of these continuing communications. Even the guys that work on the tools who don't have a Naylor Love email, we have organised apps which sends them a text which tells them if they go and check their home email, there's an email from Rick there. And so we've managed to communicate with everybody on the company. And the feedback we've had has been exceptional. It's been that I had one email a couple of weeks ago from one of our people saying his wife works for a large national company, and they've had one in the 4 weeks of shutdown, or up until that point, that had one email from the CEO, and it said something just a good luck sort of thing, whereas they'd had probably at least 10 or 12 from us by me at that stage, explaining what was going on and keeping them informed. So people felt very informed, and our level of engagement, which is a very important thing for us, we've got very high levels of engagement, which we've maintained. We measure, and we've managed to maintain through the crisis. My biggest concern is not short term. Construction is as you can imagine, our contracts sort of go for 6, 12 months or more. So the immediate situation is projects that might stop, but that's unlikely. We've got one in Auckland, which is a hotel. As you can imagine, the client for that particular project hasn't got any people to put in it when it's open. So they're just closing it up to watertightness. No fit out will happen, and they're short curtailing the contract. We may see 1 or 2 others like that happening. My biggest concern is the medium term. That's where we're going to be in 6 to 12 months. Just like retail, the hospitality, our business is very much cash flow. We're very high volume, very low margin operations. So the turn-off of the revenues over the last 4 weeks has been very, very hard on us. We've managed to pay our people fully through that period, but if it had gone on a lot longer, it could have been very, very difficult. So now we've got to make the decision as what's going to happen. As Fleur was saying, where we're going in the medium term. I suspect, and I've had the benefit of living through the 87 stock market crash, and I knew what happened as a result of that. And the 6 to 12 months after that, we saw a lot of downturn in the construction industry. The pipeline turned off, and I have a worry that that is going to happen. So my role now is, one, I can't change too much within Naylor Love other than communicating with the teams. And so now if I want to do the best for our people at Naylor Love, I've got to try and change the industry and stop that cliff of revenue.
Yeah. And think about the wider industry issues. Gareth, just at this point, because you touched on this before with looking at the mojo, you know, it's tracking down, and obviously we're sort of 5 weeks into the lockdown now. You know, the reality is hitting. What's your advice to CEOs about how they try and you know, I mean, pick themselves up as probably not entirely appropriate, but there is this need, isn't it, to constantly, you know, recheck yourself, because you know, this is a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Fleur touched on it straight away around taking care of yourself and walking and cycling, and you know, even some of the other panel members that we've had on this forum in the past, the first thing they said that went out the window was self-care. You know, if you're leading other people and you're not taking care of yourself, one, you're not role modeling it, and two, it's not sustainable. You know, as far as the mojo going down, we're still seeing relatively positive mojo than what we expected, but there are definitely sectors that have been burning quite hard, like essential services. So I think, you know, personal leadership's just as important as all the other leadership attributes, but you know, measuring it, there's so many apps and so many things that people can do to measure their health and well-being, and keep an eye on what they eat, and how they're connecting with family in their downtime. It's really important to get your personal leadership right before you can lead other people.
Absolutely. Well, let's pick up on that and turn to, you know, this idea of whether or not level 3 will actually liberate your business or sector in Rick's case, or is it in fact potentially a double-edged sword? I mean, it seems that level 3 is a bit like you know, halfway, you know, not quite as strict as we were in level 4, obviously, but without the freedoms that we're all longing for at level 2. Let's talk about how you've had to modify your business to adapt, particularly from an operational perspective, to deal with the, you know, obviously the restrictions that are now required for level 3 compliance. And I guess in your case, Fleur, this has been quite onerous, because, you know, it's all about contactless delivery, and there's a whole lot of you know, standards required for the way staff can engage with each other. And the other question I'm interested from you know, the hospo point of view is some of this actually worthwhile, that, you know, all this work you've got to do and you're barely sort of covering your margins? I mean, that must be a worry as well too.
Yeah, look, I think that we fairly quickly came to the conclusion that level 3 is a pretty difficult environment for a hospitality business to operate in, and we've made some clear decisions around most of our sites will remain closed, and still, even at level 2, the viability of them, because, you know, they're quite big beasts to open up. You don't just sort of walk in there and turn on the fryer and get away with it. You know, there's a lot goes into it, and we've done some great negotiations with landlords that, you know, why we are remaining closed, you know, that we are getting some relief, so we don't want to upset that apple cart. But look, last night we did open, yesterday we opened 2 of our smaller sites, our Hawker and Roll, which is a fast casual sort of grab and go type place. We opened in Queenstown to, you know, a reasonable trade. It was interesting with the staff. You know, we had to really talk them through that, although that it was level 3, they are still in their own bubble, and, you know, these are very small sites, and they had to sort of position themselves in various different places to operate. But look, it went okay. We opened our other site in Sylvia Park, and that was, you know, not okay. And I think that in Queenstown, it just showed we've got some really good local support. So all of those things going forward are going to be, you know, our customer engagement we watch pretty closely, and that's something that for the success of our business into the next 2 or 3 months is going to be vitally important, because even though we can survive now, we may get 2 months down the track and that may be a completely different outcome.
Tell us a bit about the way you're sort of using technology, because I've been amazed that in the last 3 or 4 days, I've probably had about 6 texts from restaurants that I've long since forgotten that they actually even have my mobile number anymore, but they have been proactively, out there promoting the fact that they've got, and I can't blame them. I'd be doing the same, obviously, if I did it. But have you been, looking at technology options?
Yeah, look, we're a pretty high tech company. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. We've been first to market on a lot of things. Order ahead apps. We had it before BP had it for their coffees, and things so tech plays a really big part in our business, and most of our stuff is all integrated. So it's been something that does work. The social space is pretty crowded, and it's pretty hard to get attention. But you've got to just keep at it and be consistent and have good messaging. So, Instagram, Facebook, whatever channel, EDMs, obviously we've got a great loyalty program, and we've got tens of thousands of people on our loyalty, and we're really pulling on their heartstrings to help us out. But we've got their loyalty because we have a great product. And that really, at the end of the day, is what we see will get us through, is our great product and our great people.
If we think of construction, Rick, you've probably got it a bit easier than Fleur, because largely you can get back to business, and while there might be some site constraints, you can largely kind of get on with it again. The tools are back in gear. But are you seeing perhaps some of the limitations within level 3 that will still be a constraint for your business as well too?
Most of from site to site, some will be operating pretty much as normal. Others might be down. Productivity might be down 20 or 30%. The issue with that will be is how we cover the costs. Is that something, because with a low margin business like ours, 20 or 30 decrease in productivity has a major impact on the bottom line. So we would expect to share that with our clients and our subcontractors, and it's where, rather than going down a contractual route and going into a dispute, so we're hoping we can sit down the table, have a tripartite discussion with subbies and customers, and say how we can manage these costs, guys. We understand that client organisations are hurting because businesses like Fleur's need rent relief, and I can understand why they need that, and so that they get the double-edged sword of their contractors coming after them for more money too because of costs. So that's really the issue. It's not the productivity, is how we're going to deal with the costs for the lack of productivity where it exists. That's the big issue for our perspective.
Gareth, do you kind of forget about productivity in this space? You just simply accept you're in a survival mode, and you're less worried about people's productivity, or should you be still keeping all of those key metrics uppermost in your mind as well?
We've got to keep the cash flows going for ourselves and also our subcontractors. And it's important. Most of our subcontractors are SMEs. They all, in fact, are SMEs. There's about construction industry is about 300,000 people roughly, and there's about 50,000 SMEs. So there's very, very few companies the scale of ours. Most of them, we are supported by numerous small subcontractors, and we need those guys to survive. And so we've got to keep feeding them. And so that's part of the process, is to make sure they survive. Their success is our success.
What are the metrics, Gareth, for CEOs to be thinking about? I mean, obviously self-care is probably at the top, because, as you've said, if you don't have that, you can't support your teams. But what other metrics should be the focus during times like this?
Look, I think even in general, even outside of times like this, measurement is really important. Humans are goal-orientated beasts, so measuring where you're at with things is really important from organisation levels. Not just a measure of mojo, but your team engagements. Right from the CEO, Rick's and his senior team and Fleur's senior team. What are they doing? How are they coping? What's the engagement level like? Have they got all the tools they need to get things done? I'm listening this morning and I'm hearing a lot from both of these people that they've communicated differently and more often. And as we speak to CEOs, That's been one of the main changes. You know, why have we waited till now to up and improve our communication? It's because I think we're now measuring engagement of people. We're aware that, you know, they may not be okay, they're isolated, people are worried and scared, but, you know, coming out of this, what are the tools that we're going to use in order to optimize our leadership? How do we measure the engagement and the connection with our people, and how do we, you know, really optimize? It's not about sending any more emails. It's about, you know, this human interaction, because that's what leadership's about. It's about humans and things that breathe. So I think coming out of this, you know, there's a whole range of different things that we need to start to measure differently. Our industry, no differently, the two industries you've heard from, we need to shift and change. And I'd like to think that, you know, what the Institute's been working on around measuring leadership has been really important for organisations like these.
You mentioned one of your, you know, key principles within the organisation is adventurous. I guess it's difficult to be adventurous when you're dealing with some of the constraints around it. But how do you, I guess, try and maintain an adventurous mindset and not let this become kind of all-consuming, as it were?
Yeah, well, I think that you know, from an entrepreneurial aspect, you know, you're probably always dreaming, and that adventurous part has been a really key part of Go-To Collection and our wider team. That, you know, no idea is a stupid idea, and however small or however large it is, you know, you need to be able to bring it to the table. I mean, we always say, you know, take the idea, take it further, work out whether it actually is going to work, and then bring it to us. But, you know, I have had so many emails over the last few weeks of just incredible ideas from managers, from chefs, from people who have only worked for us for a short time, all talking about, you know, things that we could do and some ideas that we've never thought about. So I think, you know, for us within the business, that adventurous part has always been, you know, a really key player in our success. And, you know, we ask all our staff to be adventurous always. And that's adventurous in the hospitality they bring. Not everybody is an extrovert and able to sell, but we, you know, really encourage them to be adventurous with themselves. And, you know, that's a little bit about pushing themselves into areas that may not be of comfort. And I think for me and the management team, we've almost been slightly excited at times over the last 5 weeks about some of the ideas that we're thinking of and where we could get to. And probably, you know, the fact that, you know, maybe we've got an opportunity to reset a few things that weren't that great. I think that's the silver lining in all of this, is that, you know, we've had to have a hold. You know, things are going to be different, and we can reimagine what was, you know, our business as it was is going to be completely different when we get back to it.
Well, that segues nicely actually to our first audience question. And if you are with us online, then do feel free to send us through your questions either via Slido or just enter it into the YouTube chat. And our first question picks up on that theme you just mentioned, Fleur. Is this a rebuild or an opportunity to reinvent? How are you thinking about?
Oh, look, I mean, if we can stay afloat and survive, and, you know, I have listened to a great podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it was like survive, strive, and thrive. And, you know, the survival was up to the financial controller and HR, and the strive was the CEO and the entrepreneurial and the ideas and the strategic and getting the team involved, and the thrive was the operational. And I really think that if we can, I think we've got an opportunity to reimagine ourselves and have a much better product. Definitely.
Rick, how are you leading your senior team, and how are they leading the subsequent teams? Because obviously you are dealing in a sort of a decentralized environment. As you said, you're based in Nelson, you've got teams all over. How are you maintaining that degree of coordination and flow and communication with all of them? And in turn, how are they leading their own teams?
Sure, I'll add to that. I just wouldn't mind adding something to Fleur's comments about taking an opportunity to reset. I think it was Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. And I think this crisis is really going to give a lot of companies who are forward thinking an opportunity to say, look at things, how do we do things differently? How do we do things better? And so I think those that will be successful, still around 50 to 100 years, will take that opportunity. I have every 2 days at 4 o'clock this afternoon, included myself and my executive team meet by Microsoft Teams, which is a similar system to Zoom, and we spend an hour just talking about all the things that are going on around the place politically and economically, and what's happening around the country. I'm very interested today to hear about how our sites are bedding in and how things are going out there. And from that, they will take out any information and communicate as necessary with their teams. They also run newsletters less frequently than I do, but normally once a week to once a fortnight, they're sending a note out to their staff to keep up with them on the basis that they can't speak to them face to face. And hopefully when we get out past level 4 into level 3 into level 2, they'll get an opportunity to get out around the sites and get face to face, which is a very, very important part of our business. In fact, you were talking about self-care. I find it far easier to look after myself in the current situation than I did previously. Normally my working week was 6 o'clock. I'd be out of the door on a Monday morning to catch the plane to wherever I was going, and I'd get home about 6 o'clock on a Friday night, and I'd spend that whole week living out of a suitcase or a backpack, and that's very hard to maintain exercise, good eating habits, all those sorts of things through that period. But I'm working from home. I can get out, ride my bike, get up the hill every day, and that's what I'm doing. And so it's actually, ironically, that's one thing that's opened my eyes to the benefits from working from home and how effectively you can actually work from home if you put your mind to it.
Gareth, I know you've been doing a lot of coaching, throughout this as part of your role. What are you sensing around with the way CEOs are thinking about this opportunity for a reset or a reinvent?
Well, the one thing I would say is that if people aren't reinventing at the moment, it's a missed opportunity, but it's also, it supports survival. A lot of the coaching conversations that we've been having generically around, leadership's a pretty lonely place. It's you haven't got lots of peers and colleagues in roles like Rick's and Fleur's. It's a bit of a lonely place. So first and foremost, they've enjoyed a safe space where they can download and help process their thinking on what they're working on. It's a really important place where they can just get it out. Working with them through some instruments of measurement gives you a standing point to have a really good conversation and create some goals and moving forward. Initially, like I said, we heard a lot of people were dropping off. The things are changing from what they would normally do. People are either like Rick, exercising more, or they've dropped it off totally. Those that were fit. So really bringing them back into the now. People often worry about the future on things that may or may not happen. And the only thing they can control is really what's happening right now and then for them. So, we've been working really hard to slow them down, make them present, bring them back into the now and understand and notice what they notice, which is really important to get leaders to slow down. Because like I said, they're burning a lot of adrenaline. Some of them are moving really fast and they're missing some opportunities. So we're in a marathon, not a sprint. So it's important that we just check in.
You mentioned, the difficult situation of having to let people go, which is obviously probably the hardest part of this for many CEOs and leaders. I mean, a difficult process to deal with in any situation, but because particularly in your case, because we know in Queenstown there isn't much else for them to go to. How are you thinking about those roles? Are you suspending them, or are you encouraging those people to come back? Obviously, when you reopen, how are you communicating that message to them?
Yeah, so look, this has probably been the toughest part of what's going on. And as a business, we've got to make some decisions. That survival part is, sometimes making really, really difficult decisions that, I've never been in this situation before. So it has been, a work through, definitely. But a lot of our staff are immigrants on some sort of visa of some sort. And look, within communication with key people within our teams, we've felt that for us, what we're doing is allowing them, because of working with the wage subsidy and the annual leave and things that they're owed, that the sooner that we do this for a majority of them, it gives them an opportunity to make some decisions, because it gives them some cash in their pocket and allows them to take a repatriation flight, move somewhere where there is going to be potentially more work. Auckland, Christchurch, I don't know. We don't know where that is, but we've been working very hard with them. A lot of our North Island sites, we employ a lot of students, as part-timers. And this was, something that we needed to, talk through with them. And look, a lot of them are unsure about what they're doing with their study. Their study is more of a focus than a part-time job. So with them and with all the staff, we've said the moment that we've got an opportunity to understand what this looks like and what volumes we're going to be doing, you will be the first people we call. And, we've had really good feedback from everybody. We haven't had any negatives really around it, because I think everybody's become very realistic, particularly in the hospitality and tourism industry. They can all see it. It's happening in front of our eyes. Queenstown, everyone, it's on the tip of their tongues. It's just a reality. But look, it doesn't make it any easier, and it's been a very difficult, emotional process to go through.
All right, we're almost out of time, but this final question, I think, is one that has been the most interesting. We've asked it of all of our panelists in this forum series, is that, given our current operating environment is going to be the new normal for a while, what can you see working that you might want to hold on to in the future? And what do you think you're going to have to change, both in the way you operate as a leader in the future and perhaps, operationally from what you are seeing already? Rick, would you like to kick us off? Oh, you've got your microphone muted there. I think, Rick, we'll just get you to... Yeah, there we go.
Sorry about that. From a personal perspective, I think the effectiveness of working from home has been a major realisation. We were working on a wellbeing program. One of our biggest issues in the construction industry is the hours guys on the sites have to work generally. And with our staff surveys, it's that work-life balance and work-related stress are the two biggest issues we've got to overcome. Now, we've been really searching for ways through this, and so we're probably seeing some clues to how we can change things through what we've been doing as far as working from home under level 4. Now, that will apply to a lot of people, obviously, but hands-on trades and site trade supervision is going to be difficult. But it does give some clues for ways forward to improve the well-being of our staff.
Now, obviously, working from home isn't really an option. Well, it is for you, Fleur, but clearly not for you from your staff when you're running a hospo business. But what aspects have you noticed about your operational style that you might want to hold on to in the future?
Yeah, look, I just think, that we do have quite a large operational office, and, for some time it's been in question, whether it really is necessary in our business. But with, 10 sites and around the country, it's always been a nice hub to be able to go to and for us to be together. But it's really important to think that, this is a new environment and anything is possible. And I think we've all realised that not having an office doesn't mean that we can't talk every day, and doesn't mean we can't see each other. And that actually the productivity for some of our team members, financial and marketing and things, have really gone up, because they're feeling like they're really comfortable. They can see deal with their kids in the morning, and they can get out for a walk at lunchtime. And so I think there's some real positives to come out of this on many levels. With us, with our customers, I think we're yet to get there, because we really need to see what it's going to look like at level 2 and level 1. And we may have to do, a stepped approach, because I think the step is going to be backwards for us. We're going to go from massive social distancing and tables, far apart and nobody really having fun in my book, to maybe at level 1 or below, where we're back to, everybody having a rip-roaring party and enjoying themselves.
All right, Gareth, some final thoughts from you, perhaps, about what you're hearing from CEOs that they're liking. This has been a common theme we've heard is, people have found the whole remote working thing, a lot more successful than they might have otherwise imagined. But anything else that you're detecting from your sessions?
One thing I'd noticed is a lot of them were, prior to this, were a little anti-working from home, especially the fast movers. They weren't big on people working remotely or whatever else. And I think this has been, a bit of a disruptor to how we go about business, how we look after our teams, how we function normally. So I think what I'm seeing is leaders are really open to change, to trying something different, and just to give it a go. So, I think there was a quote from last week where they said, let your teams dream and let them have a go, because you'll be quite surprised at the results of what they come out of. And we've heard from Fleur, people even outside of the industry that know nothing are giving great suggestions on how you can do business differently or offer products differently. So, it's interesting times.
Thanks, Gareth. And that concludes our fifth and final ISL Leader Forum in this particular series. I'd like to thank our panelists, Fleur, Rick, and Gareth, for sharing their experiences and insights with us today. And special thanks to you, of course, our audience, for watching and participating. This live stream will be edited into bite-sized chunks. It'll be available to view on the ISL website. That's www.leadership.ac.nz, and that'll happen in the coming days. Now, the ISL Pulse of Leaders in New Zealand and Australia can be accessed in the Leader Forum section of our homepage. That's also at www.leadership.ac.nz. If you'd like to continue the discussion, we certainly encourage you to do that, or raise a question you'd like to discuss in our forthcoming forums, then join the dedicated ISL Leader Forum LinkedIn group. It's very easy to do so. Just search for ISL Leader Forum in the search bar on LinkedIn, then make sure you select groups, and then click on ISL Leader Forum group and request to join. As I mentioned, this is our final forum in this Leadership in Crisis series, but ISL currently building our next series, which will be focusing on thought leadership. Our next forum will be Wednesday, the 20th of May, and will kick off the start of a monthly series, Navigating New Seas. I'll be joined by Stephen Langdon, Managing Director of Recruitment and Leadership Consultants, Russell Reynolds, based in Singapore, and Natalie Jane McDonald, CEO of Senior Sunrise Living, a UK-based residential care provider, discussing an international perspective of leadership in these unique times. Look forward to welcoming you back for another informative half hour in a little under a month's time, giving experience from leaders like you, grappling with the challenges of this new business operating environment. I'm Andrew Patterson for ISL.